Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So I decided that we're going to get into sexual magic because there's a lot of perception surrounding this. I think due to Hollywood and many other things, there's been a lot of misinformation printed and such. However, before you actually get into sexual magic, you need to know a little bit of history on what aspects I mean, because certain people follow certain orders, regimes, different things, so this is not so much Tantra, let's put it that way. It's separate to that. I will do Tantra eventually, but this is just sexual magic is different to Tantra, even though some of the aspects are the same. But first, I'm going to go into the history and which sexual magic platform I am taking it from. This is handwritten, so bear with me. I have to read it, and with being handwritten, it's not always easy. But we're going on things that have been learnt, so I'm not saying it's fact either. I'm just saying it's what I was taught, I guess, what I've learnt, not fact. Doesn't mean it's fiction either. It just is. It's as simple as that. June 1912. A 34-year-old man called Mr Crowley. Yes, I did. I just brought his name up. Naughty me. Received a colourful though odd visitor. This was at London, his London flat, which was 124 Victoria Street, by the way. 124 Victoria Street, London, Mr Crowley's flat. His name was Herr Ruess, and he was an agent of it was a secret service actually, but there was many other things that he was as well. I do believe he was a composer or an opera singer, something like opera singer or composer, I do believe, if you look him up. Herr Ruess. I'll pop him in the description so you know what his name is spelt like. He did have a degree though, a high degree, as a Freemason, and he was head of the Ordo Templi Orientis. It's a German magic society basically, so it has a lot of German roots in it. 2 years earlier, Ruess had presented Crowley with honorary membership to the OTO, and this was under the assumptions, I think, but I'm not 100% sure, but it's what I was taught anyway, but it's assumed that it was under the assumptions it would bolster Crowley's esoteric credentials, because there was a lawsuit that was filed against Aleister Crowley, and it was S.L. MacGregor Matthers that filed this lawsuit, and he was the head of London's Hermetic Order, basically. There was other Hermetic orders, but he was the head of London's one. The lawsuit was regarding the publishing of rituals and teachings of the Golden Dawn that Crowley actually obviously published and such. The lawsuit was sort of one of these things that basically Matthers went into it saying that he was highly regarded, highly respected, and threw off all these names. So the way of making Crowley look just as unique was a way to give him names, of course. And in this particular lawsuit, Matthers had claimed that he was the worldwide head of a particular organisation, and that outraged Ruess, because it was kind of seen as a spiritual presumption. It wasn't fact, He was going out there and stating all this stuff, but none of it was actually fact, and so Ruess didn't like that. In an attempt to make Matthers not seem so important in the court's eyes, because remember, this is a court, The idea was organisations lavished Crowley with a host of honorary degrees and titles, and in fact, to be honest, there was that many that Crowley himself lost track. He lost track of his various memberships, his degrees, and his mystic titles too. Crowley won the case, by the way, and this is why we have the published Equinox. There's a few Equinoxes, actually, to be fair. But this visit of June 1912 was a different reason. Ruess had visited Crowley. It was regarding Crowley's published writings of OTO Supreme Secrets of Sexual Magic. Crowley stated he did not even know such secrets, and he hadn't done such a thing, because in fact, he didn't even know OTO had anything to do with sexual ritual magic. Ruess went to Crowley's bookshelf, and he took out a copy of Liber. Now, the book itself is CCC XXX111, but it's the Book of Lies, basically. Liber is just book in German, by the way. And he opened up the book to chapter 36, and this is the Sapphire. Chapter 36 is the Sapphire in the book, if you actually managed to get the book. But this version was much shorter, anyway, than the actual full original one. And it's the Hexagram Ritual, which is really interesting because all through growing up, if there's things that I know I worked with, it was pyramids and putting together to make the macabre, and then the hexagram and pentagram shapes were used quite a lot. And Crowley did not understand, actually, the small chapter. He didn't, at first he was quite confused. He didn't understand what the chapter revealed, what the secrets, what this supreme sexual magic secret was all about, just from this small chapter. But when Ruess explained to him, and he had patience to do this, the theoretical sort of aspects of magic, Crowley had an epiphany, and since childhood, he had intuited the importance and the potential power of sex. It's the most simple terms, and that's the key to it. The most simple terms is always the key. Not only to the mythological symbolism of the ancients, of Christianity and Freemasonry, but, theoretically at least, the key to the mysteries of human consciousness and creation itself. The Oath of Secrecy, though, was more than just an oath type, because actually it was like a promise, okay? So they say it's the Oath of Secrecy and you have to take an oath, but actually when you go through the book and you sort of go down it and you section it out, it's not so much as an oath, it's more of a promise to protect and preserve and to not let it be corrupted. The information of the rituals, it's to be passed on to people that are seemed worthy, people that wish to discover and not shame or shun or change it as such. It's more of a promise to keep it original and only let people know who are worth to know it, basically. I think it's the 11th, I do believe, initiate of the OTO is not obliged to conceal the secret, but to just be sure it's passed to worthy people. It's really weird how the oath works. You have to sit through them all and go through them all. Now, Crowley being Crowley, took the obligation very serious indeed, and I mean very serious. His writings can be confusing, disturbing, even more like symbolic languages, but magical labour is really, really hard. It is. People have this thing about it being so easy, and it's not. There's a lot involved, and the study can be grilling in many ways, but the reward at the end is more than words can explain. Crowley was authorised by Ruess to be head of an actual British OTO chapter, and it was to expand and develop. And Crowley took that quite seriously, and he was very into it, and he did plan and develop this. In fact, he didn't stop until 1947, and that was when Mr Crowley passed away. Crowley puts sex magic at the top of his focus, and this is where we get these many visions of orgies, depravity. Though true, I'm going to be honest, Mr Crowley liked to shock people who were easy to shock, so if he thought he would come across you and be able to shock you with, you know, a derogatory remark or something that is deemed unworthy for society, it's something he would do. It doesn't mean anything by it. He was a very odd character, but he did like to shock people that were easily shocked. The thing is, sex magic is draining mentally. It's the challenge in it is physical, mental, spiritual. It's all as one, you know. The mechanics to it, and it's usually done on quantum mechanics of the body, and it requires deep discipline. It really does. So these visions of like orgies and depravity, they're not so true at all. Ecstasy is what you're looking for. Complete ecstasy. The divine. It's the divine consciousness. And it's a simple key to sex magic. Timeless moments. But what's a timeless moment? An orgasm. Time-stopping orgasm. A timeless moment of orgasmic proportion. You know, the self becomes all and we are the all. There is nothing we can't create. You know, understand orgasm and ecstasy. Crowley would refer to orgasm and ecstasy as death and sacrifice sometimes. Sexual fluids became blood or water or the elixir. The penis is named the lance, wand, road and even cross. The vagina is a cup, the grail and even the rose. This is because sexual publications were not permitted. So what you need to understand is when you're reading his work, you need to really read his work. Because, you see, he's going to put death and sacrifice, and that's what you're going to automatically think. Well, he's just saying, like, ecstasy and orgasm. So you really need to think before you start reading his work and not understanding it. It's very important. Do your research and understand, you know. But there's another reason why I did this. And apparently it's because not everyone can understand Crowley's work when they read it. They find it confusing and conflicting. And you can understand why. He said, basically, it was so that those who have selfish interests would not see it so clearly. Their judgment would cloud their perception. Yet those who knew his true magic and knew magic, they would not be clouded. They would see the truth behind it. They would have put the work into it. Therefore, they would understand, obviously, what it really meant. Crowley's greatest and his most approachable work is the publish of the Gnostic Catholic Church. It's also commonly known as the Gnostic Mass, and it's a central ceremony. It's public and private by the OTO. It's a ritualized celebration of the Order's supreme secret of magic. Secret and sacred, of course. He ingeniously crafted a sort of Gnostic Mass to openly communicate and execute the operation in the form of public ceremony. The Gnostic Mass is one of Crowley's most beautiful ritual ceremonies. It's very similar, and I mean this, in form to the Mass of the Roman Catholic and also the Eastern Orthodox churches. Crowley attended Mass at St. Basil's Cathedral, and that aided the inspiration. He got his inspiration from actually attending Mass, just so you know. It's important that you understand this kind of sexual magic. Crowley sees bodies as an alchemical laboratories, which is really not a bad thing because it's all about elements, and elements are the basic of all life, so it kind of makes sense. The way to succeed and the way to suck eggs. Yeah, that's one of Crowley's. The way to succeed and the way to suck eggs. The holy hexagram. Plunge from the height, O God, and interlock with man. Plunge from the height, O man, and interlock with beast. The red triangle. The descending tongue of grace. The blue triangle. The ascending tongue of prayer. It's interchangeable, you know. The double gift of tongues, basically. The world of double power. The abracadabra, and we'll get into that later. It is not just an unnecessary word. There's a lot of meaning behind that word, more than you probably understand or know if you have not done your research. It's kind of like when we look at the triangle effect and we put them together, they make a different shape and depends how we move them. But there is far more into the workings, well, any workings of his. But you've just got, you've got to read between the lines. You've got to know his work. You've got to do your research, because you're going to be reading it and you'll be seeing one thing when it really means another. And I think that's where a lot of people do get, so confused, because I can understand that. If it's not worded correctly, you're automatically going to think, well, wow, that's sacrifices and this, and it doesn't actually mean that. It's the fact that back then, certain words and even with medical books, they couldn't be published. It was not allowed. It's that simple. It wasn't allowed. Great work is accomplished in silence. So the red triangle, again, it's interchangeable, so you can change it. Upwards, it's like fire. Blue triangle, down, just like water, the elements. In the magical hexagram, it's reversed. The descending red triangle is that of Horus, the descending flame upon the altar, licking up the burnt offering. The blue triangle is the aspiration, the devotion, and it's a symbol of direct force. So now that I've told you all this, it's time to take that in before we go any further. I understand it can be confusing, but hopefully I'm going to try and make it a bit easier. I'm going to try, at least, because even I have problems reading the journals, but at least I'm giving it a go and bringing it across the best I can. I can say this, please do not judge, because people are going to hear that name and not want to know. Don't judge, because there's more to it than seems. That's all, and it's really important to read between the lines and understand. And I mean really understand, and that takes a lot of work and research, trust me. Thank you for listening. I hope you continue to listen to this, because it's a new series, so we shall get into more the further we go. Many blessings.